We're talking today with James O'Malley of Benton Harbor, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Chicago in October of 1932. After about 8 years, family moved to Appleton, Wisconsin. My father ran a nightclub, and we lived in Wisconsin until I left for the military. After that, my parents moved back to Chicago. When I returned from overseas, lived in Chicago for a while, stationed at Glenview Naval Air Station.
Okay, just to back up a little bit now. So your father he took the job, and how did he wind up getting that job in Wisconsin? Do you know?
My uncle owned it, and he enticed my father to come up to run it with the understanding that he would receive ownership of it.
Okay.
And, which he never did, by the way.
All right. Now, what had your father been doing before that?
He was a car salesman. Then when the war started, he worked for the United States Steel Corporation.
Okay. But he would have been a car salesman. So when you're a young kid, the Depression was still going on.
Big time.
All right.
And my father and mother credit the milkman for keeping me alive, because he delivered milk whether my parents could pay for it or not, knowing that sometime they would be able to. And our story was the same as virtually everybody's.
Okay. Now, by the time the war started, you're up in Wisconsin.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember hearing about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, yes.
How did
I'm
that-
still in Chicago when that happened.
Okay. Because I thought you said you moved when you were 8. So.
Well, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Probably 9.
Maybe 9. Yeah, that would work. 32 then. Okay. Okay. So you're in Wisconsin then. Okay. How did you learn about Pearl Harbor?
Heard about it on the radio. And, of course, at 9 years old, I didn't really get the full impact of what was going on and how devastating things were. We would just play in the backyard. One of us would be a German, one of us would be an American.
Right.
The Americans always won.
Okay. Now, as time went on and you're getting older and the war goes on, did you pay more attention to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you had to. That's all there was on the news media and in the movies. They always had it. I had them about the war.
Okay. Now, did you finish high school?
Yes.
Okay. When did you graduate?
1950.
Okay. And then what did you do once you graduated from high school?
I received a football scholarship at a small college in West De Pere, Wisconsin. St. Norbert's was the college.
All right. And how long did you stay there?
1 semester. I was a college football player that was 5'7" and weighed 150 pounds. And I was a defensive specialist. Now, in those days, players played both ways. So being a defensive specialist was like being a good swimmer in the Sahara Desert. So after the football season, I was informed that my scholarship would not be renewed, which did not come as a surprise, given my size. And in those days, the Korean War had just started, and the draft was still very active. And if you left college, you went right to the top of the draft list. For whatever reason, I didn't want to be in the Army, so I enlisted in the Navy.
All right. So when did you enlist?
It was early 1951. I was inducted in April 1951.
Okay. And where did you go for boot camp?
Great Lakes.
Okay. And where is Great Lakes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Everybody knows Great Lakes. It's north of Chicago.
Okay. Right. But
It's still active, by the way.
yeah. All right. And now, what did the basic training consist of?
We were not as strict and as difficult as the Army or the Marine Corps. We did a lot of marching, of course. We did a lot of classroom work. We learned how to tie knots, even though the Navy didn't have any sailing ships anymore. And a lot of educational things, more classroom things, probably than in the Army or the Marine Corps.
Well, what would you get in the classroom?
Well, knot tying, navigation, discipline. We learned how to shoot a M1 rifle, which, by the way, was the first and the last time we ever saw an M1 rifle. We had code training, the Morse code.
Now, did everyone get Morse code training? Was that just a standard thing, or only certain people?
Everybody got it at a very low level. After basic training, I got more of it in a different venue.
Right, okay. But some of it is in basic training. Now, how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to life in the Navy?
I would say fairly easy. I did not get homesick. And it was, I would say, not too bad.
Okay. How much emphasis was there on discipline and following orders?
Oh, total. I mean, that's the key thing, particularly in the Navy, because most of us were going to be assigned at a relatively small unit where your closeness to your job was very much in evidence. And a lot of guys were on ships like aircraft carriers that had a crew of 3,000. So you weren't that close to the top. Where in a squadron it had maybe 100, 150 people in it. The separation from the command level and the operation level was pretty close.
Okay. All right. Now, how long was the basic training stage?
About 100 years. I really don't remember exactly. Probably in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. Now, in here, were you, when you enlisted, were you given any options about what kind of training you might take or what you might do?
No.
Okay.
Now you do. Then you did what they told you to do.
All right. Did they have you take tests to figure out what you might be good at?
Yes. When you enter basic training, the first thing you do is take a battery test, which is designed to show the things that you're strong in and things that you're weak in, ostensibly to put round pegs in round holes. As it turned out, that really wasn't the case. I took the test and I did very well in reading, comprehension, writing. So I thought I would be a yeoman in a little office on a battleship somewhere. That didn't work out. As I say, I did well in that. I did very poorly in mechanical. As a matter of fact, I think the man that gave the test put a note on the bottom and said, if you hand this man a pair of pliers, we will lose the war. I'm lying about that, of course.
But anyway, so okay. So you don't do, so what kind of specialized training do you get?
Well, later on, then you leave boot camp, and I got my orders, and I said, this is fine. Where am I going? And they said, you're going to pre-flight school in Jacksonville, Florida. Oh, okay, that sounds pretty fun. And there, you really got heavily into flight regulations, a lot of code, because that was the major communication device. Some courses like physics that you'd already taken in high school, so that was pretty easy. and that a lot of disciplinary things. First thing they did in school, they took a head of lettuce and threw it into a revolving propeller, and of course that made coleslaw out of it. And that was to tell you and show you graphically that is the most dangerous part of your job, is walking into that propeller. A lot of radar training, and just flight operations, how to use the radio, and how to follow orders.
Okay. Now, at this stage in pre-flight, did this have everybody who might go into an air crew, including pilots, or do you think it was geared more toward people who were going to have technical jobs?
It was just the latter.
Okay.
We were not taught how to fly an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
We were taught how to react to things that the airplane did. For example, one of the major stresses was do not jump out of the airplane unless it's on fire. You're safer if you ride it down.
Mm-hmm.
Since Navy operations are generally over water, planes could ditch in water
Mm-hmm.
Relatively safely, as opposed to doing it in mountainous or
Mm-hmm.
land masses. It turned out later on that the P2V Neptune, which we flew in, could float for 7 minutes and gave you enough time usually to deploy the life raft and get out.
Mm-hmm.
We also had to carry knives, heavy hunting knives. If we could not reach a hatch to get out, we used a knife to cut a hole in the fuselage and get out of the airplane. Now that tells you how important the knife was and how thin the fuselage was.
Right. Okay. All right. And while you were doing this kind of first stage of training, did you have to stay on the base the whole time, or could you go off base?
No, it was like regular. You could. This was in Jacksonville, Florida, or near Jacksonville, Florida, and so we were able to take advantage of the nice weather. And, they had liberty.
Okay. So it was basically a day job most of the time. You go take your classes
Pretty
and
much,
that kind of thing.
Pretty much.
Do
There were a
that.
few night flights, but they were rare.
Okay. Yeah. And did they take you up in aircraft very much at this point, or is it mostly on the ground?
Mostly it was on the ground.
Okay. All right. About how long did the school last, do you think?
I believe that was 3 months.
Okay. And now, at a certain point, do they start sorting you out into specialized jobs, or what happens to you next?
Well, since it was aviation pre-flight, it was pretty general.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't sort you out. That came
Okay.
later.
All right. So what is your next stage once you complete pre-flight?
Once we finished that, we received orders for the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was, here's your orders. Where am I going?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you're going to Aviation Electronics School in Memphis, Tennessee. I said, you guys obviously didn't read the report, but there I went. That was strictly all electronic work, how to you operate equipment, how to repair it, and that one was, again, 12 weeks.
Okay. Now, did you find that you could learn this stuff after all? I mean, was the test wrong?
I would say the test was right for the time.
Mm-hmm.
I learned because I had to. And it was, electronics were not like electronics today. I mean, we were just better than two cans on a string.
Mm-hmm.
We learned radar operation and repair, radio operation and repair, general electronics,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't know where we were going, or whether we were going to be on a ship or in an airplane. Well, chances are pretty good we were going to be in an airplane because we'd gone to pre-flight school.
Right. And this was aviation electronics that you're
Aviation
studying.
Electronics. In fact, that's the title, Aviation Electronic.
Right. Okay. Now, you're doing this in Memphis, Tennessee, and then you'd been in Jacksonville, Florida before that. And this is the 1950s. The South is still segregated at this point.
Very
Did
much.
you notice that at the time?
I noticed it. If I may put a little story in here. Another shipmate and I went into Memphis. Actually, the base was in Millington, which was a suburb of Memphis. We went into Memphis and got a bus, and we were going to the USO. And like we always did, we walked to the back of the bus and sat down. And the bus driver stopped in mid-block, walked back, and he said, gentlemen, he said, do you notice there's a white line on the floor? White people sit ahead of that white line. Black people sat behind it. You are sitting in the back. So you have to get up and move up to the front. Well, we're kind of smart alecky. And there's no one else on the bus. We said, you know, we're alone on the bus. We just like to sit back here and we're fine. I said, you get up to the front. He said, no, we're going to stay here. So he got off the bus. He came back with a policeman. Now, at that time, that policeman looked about 9 feet tall and 800 pounds. And he said, gentlemen, you have three choices. You can move up to the front of that white line, you can get off the bus and walk to where you're going, or I will take you to jail. Well, with apologies to Rosa Parks, who came about 5 years, 7, 8 years later, we got off the bus. And everything was segregated there. There was the white drinking fountain and the black drinking fountain. There were entries to businesses and movie theaters and things for the blacks and the other entrances for the whites. That was my first real experience with segregation. And that was hard to understand.
Right. Now, were there any black servicemen training with you, or was it kind of an all-white group that you were with?
There were a few, but the military was still segregated then. Truman had not ordered.
Actually, yeah, he had. He did it in 47, but it took a while to kind of filter through the system.
Well, by the time we got through, there were a few blacks, and what I realized, the impact that it had. When I finally got into the squadron, there was another black sailor, and he went through the same schools that I did. And I was an electronics technician. He was a truck driver. So there was still some
well, there's still discrimination.
discrimination, not segregation, but discrimination in the military.
Right. Okay. Now, how long do you think the school in Memphis was? Another 3 months?
It was around 12 years, 12 weeks.
Okay. So basically now you've had, sort of 3 different phases of training at this point, about 8 months or so worth of that. Do you have additional schooling now after that, or do you get sent to a unit?
You get sent to a unit.
Okay. And what unit did you go to?
Well, again, it was a situation. We had a choice.
Okay.
You can go to Hawaii or you can go to Norfolk, Virginia. Well, Norfolk, Virginia still had signs on the lawns of residents: sailors and dogs stay off the lawn. So hula girls, warm weather, Hawaii.
Right.
What a choice. And still didn't know where I was going other than it was in Hawaii.
Okay.
So we got to Hawaii by ship. First time I'd ever been on a ship. Then we were separated to where we were going. And I and many of the others were assigned to Squadron VP-22, which was based at Barbers Point Airfield. And some went to what is called a FASRON, which was a repair squadron. They didn't fly, they just worked on airplanes. And then when you got to the squadron, then you learned what you were going to do. Some of us were assigned to air crews. Some were to maintenance and all the other
right.
things.
So what was your assignment?
I was assigned to an air crew,
Okay. And what was your job or position?
radar operator.
Okay. And what kind of aircraft were you on?
It was a P2V-5 Neptune anti-submarine patrol bomber.
Okay. Now, can you describe that plane a little bit?
Twin engine, land-based. Its armor was two 20-millimeter cannons in the nose and a turret, two in a turret in the tail, and two 50 caliber machine guns in the crown on top of the aircraft.
Okay.
Carried a crew of 11. It could go with a crew of 7, but for longer, because most of our flights were patrols that took a long time, we carried a crew of 11.
Okay. And what kind of warfare was it designed for?
Anti-submarine.
Okay. And what kind of equipment or things did you carry that enabled you to search for submarines?
Well, we had radar. We had what we call sonobuoys, which were underwater microphones that you could drop to detect metallic sounds. Later versions of the same airplane had what was called magnetic anomaly equipment, which was basically a huge metallic receptor. And if there was metal under you in the water, it would let you know.
Right.
The radar was obviously for navigation, and if we ever found a ship or a submarine on the surface, it was that. And the sonar had not been perfected yet for aircraft. It did have it, of course, shipboard, but we did not have it yet.
Okay.
We carried a 500-pound magnetic mine in case we did find one.
All right. Now, how long did you wind up spending in Hawaii?
Boy, probably 5 months.
Okay. All right. And then how often did you go on patrol, and how long would the patrols last?
Well, in Hawaii, there were flights virtually every day. Not the same crew every day.
Okay.
But every third day we would put training missions. Because this is what we were there for.
Right.
And they lasted probably an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes.
Okay. So what did you do the rest of the time?
Work on and maintenance on the base.
Okay.
Of course, we had liberty, and Hawaii is probably the best place on the planet for liberty.
Now, was the field close to Honolulu or somewhere else?
It was just about a half-hour drive from Honolulu. And we flew all over the islands. Flew over Mauna Loa a few times. And if you want spectacular, fly over an active volcano. Well, of course, most of the time it was Honolulu. And one of my favorite things, on Sunday mornings, they had a program called Hawaii Calls, and it was all Hawaiian music from the Mauna Loa Hotel on Waikiki Beach. And it was a U shape with the open end of the U on the ocean. And the weather was always great, even when it rained. Because everybody knew it was going to stop and you were going to dry off. Was sitting there on a Sunday morning with a nice beverage and listening to the music and just watching the ocean. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, not a bad way to spend a war.
Not bad. Of course, we weren't spending the war there, but the remembrance of the war was still evident everywhere. And of course, they all knew you were not Hawaiian, you were an American,
right?
And you were in the military because you were wearing black shoes, and everybody had black shoes on. But that was a giveaway that you're in the military,
Right.
And there was some resistance because, well, we acted like we were in the military. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions about that one.
Okay, so sometimes soldiers and sailors were not too well behaved.
Sometimes.
Okay. But basically, you were at this point really still training for active duty someplace else.
Yes.
So after the time in Hawaii, where did you go next?
Okinawa.
Okay.
And that's where we were based. Our patrols were China, mostly at coastal waters. But we were an anti-submarine airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Neither the Chinese or the North Koreans had submarines. So basically, we were kind of a spy plane.
Mm-hmm.
And we would report on shipping in and out, movement, troop movements. We had to be careful because the coast of China was literally one long anti-aircraft operation. And they had 50 caliber machine guns. And we would fly just out of range of the 50 calibers. Chinese were not dumb. They took those 50 calibers out, put in 37 millimeter cannons, and we learned the hard way that they made the change.
Mm. Did your aircraft ever come under fire?
Yeah. We were shot at, but not shot.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky.
Okay. Did that just happen once or twice, or was that just a regular
It was
thing?
kind of a regular thing.
Okay.
Not every time, not every patrol, but most of them. And we had to be careful. I have a story about being caught far inland in China, which was pretty scary because it was dark and we didn't have any radar. We had no vision. We couldn't use the radar because the Chinese would spot us.
Did the Chinese have military aircraft themselves, or?
Yeah, they had Russian aircraft. They had the MiG-15, and they had a Yak fighter. A Yak fighter is basically the Russian version of a P-51,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the MiGs we didn't have to worry about because we were so slow and they were so fast. They couldn't line up on us to take a shot. So they finally gave up with those, and they'd send the Yaks after us. And they could line us up. They weren't that interested in shooting us down, frankly. The aircraft weapons, they were very interested.
Okay.
And we had a very big tail.
Mm-hmm.
And the ground anti-aircraft loved that for target practice. But the aircraft, they like to play. Chinese pilots were nuts, absolutely incredibly nuts. And so they would fly around, and they'd come by, fly next to us, waggle their wings, give us the finger sometimes. But the ground anti-aircraft was the main concern.
Right. Now, do you have any idea why the fighters wouldn't try to shoot you down?
They were nuts. They wanted to play.
Okay.
Now occasionally they would come after us seriously, but sometimes they were just messing around. An illustration of that came later when on a military aircraft was in a Chinese fighter plane had a collision because the pilot of the plane was goofing around.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one where famously that plane had to crash land on a Japanese or Chinese island.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was afraid because that airplane had a ton of super secret electronic gear. And they were afraid the Chinese were going to discover all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big to-do that lasted about 10 days before the Chinese liberated that airplane.
All right. Are you referring to a recent event or one that took place while you were out there?
Oh no, this happened.
There was one just a few years ago.
I think it was in the 1980s, 90s.
All right. All right, that's a later event, but for
Yeah.
at the time you're going over, so was it, how common was it for you to fly actually over land as opposed to just off the shore?
Seldom.
Okay.
Mostly it was offshore. Over land, we could, most of the time, if we got over land, it was by mistake.
Okay. Now, you mentioned there was one point when you were flying at night and you were well inland. Was that
Yes.
an accident or?
Yeah, definitely. Poor navigation or significant change in the wind direction. And we had an operational ceiling of 500 feet because we wanted to be under the Chinese air search radar.
Okay.
So we were 500 feet. We were over land quite a ways, probably 50, 70 miles. We flew at 500 feet. If we got any higher, they could see us on the air search radar and shoot us down. The mountains in China are, some of them, 3,000 feet. We were in pitch dark and in a mountainous area with mountains. So we're picking our way through. Now, I couldn't turn on my search radar because it was too powerful. So I was using my bombing radar. And on radar, you can tell if something is higher than you are, if you know what you're doing. And the crew was praying fervently that I knew what I was doing. And we were picking our way, and I was giving course corrections to keep us between mountains. All of a sudden, the bow gunner called up and said, plane commander from bow gunner, there's a mountain dead ahead. O'Malley? No, sir, no mountain. We're picking our way through. About 10 minutes later, pilot from bow gunner, there's a mountain dead ahead. O'Malley? No, sir. Can we turn? I said, if we do, we are going to hit a mountain. Now the bow gunner comes up on the flight deck. Said, O'Malley, if you don't turn this plane, I'm going to kill you myself. Just then the plane went, wiggled. Pilot said, we just passed through a thundercloud. Young man, that is your mountain. I said, get off my flight deck or I'm going to throw you out of this airplane. About 45 minutes later, I was able to call the pilot and said, we're clear over the ocean. Let's go home. And everybody was happy to do that.
All right. Was that, do you think, the scariest moment you had in one of those flights?
Pretty much, yeah. For some reason, I was not that afraid of the guns or the airplanes. That was kind of an adventure.
Okay.
Stupid, but an adventure. Our tail gunner was one of those guys that said, just give me a shot at those gooks and I'll take care of them. And the first time he went through that, they started shooting at us with the 50s. And he said, they're shooting at us. The pilot said, young man, are you not aware we are at war? So he never bragged about how tough he was anymore. But we didn't. There was sometimes that strange things happened. As with any military thing, you go from a period of, hey, everything is fine, to sheer terror. And some of our crews absolutely did that. We lost some people. I should have been killed. But by luck, I was not on the flight that I was supposed to be on, which got shot down. 7 of the crew were killed, including the guy that got to substitute for me. That was kind of scary in retrospect.
Now, how common was it for aircraft to actually be shot down or lost?
Not too often, as we always took evasive measures. And tried to stay out of range of the guns. So we lost 2 or 3 aircraft.
And then, how did they organize the crews? Was it a regular thing to switch people in and out of different crews,
No.
or just once in a while?
No, the crew you were in, now you could substitute for somebody,
Mhm.
which happened often. Somebody's sick or
Mhm.
whatever. But basically you stayed in the crew you were assigned to.
Okay. So the plane that was shot down, did that have your regular crew in it, or was that
No.
one that?
I was supposed to substitute in it,
Mm-hmm.
and we had been diverted on a flight to the Philippines. And, well, we're 18, 19-year-old
Mhm.
kids on the loose in a strange, exotic place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I reported for the flight, and I was still pretty much out of the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And plane commander was mad. He said, "Get in the bow turret and stay there till I tell you to come out." He never told me to get out. Now, the bow turret was a ball,
Mm-hmm.
and you just fit in the ball. You look over here, and there was your right knee. You look over there, there's your left knee. 2 20-millimeter gun butts in your chest. Well, it took us about 12 hours to get back to Okinawa. I could not walk.
Mm-hmm.
They carried me out of the airplane and into the hospital. I had activated a cyst in my spine. And after I'd been there, I noticed nobody was talking to me. The nurses would do whatever they needed to do and they'd walk away. Doctors
Mm-hmm.
bring me the food tray, set it down, walk off. What did I do? So I finally was released from the hospital. I went back to the squadron, and nobody talked to me there. So I finally tracked down one of my crewmates. I said, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
They said, well, nobody wanted to tell you. The flight that you were supposed to take, they had to get a substitute for you. It was shot down, and 7 of the crew members were killed,
Mhm.
including the guy that took your place. And that was, I mean, it was war.
Mm-hmm.
People die in war.
Right. Now, did you ever fly over or around Taiwan? Or
Yes. Yeah. One time we landed on Taiwan, and they didn't trust us.
mm-hmm.
The officers, the pilot, and the co-pilot, and the navigator were able to go into the terminal. The rest of the crew, we were told we could not go beyond the wingspan of the airplane, and there was an entire circle of Chinese soldiers with rifles to enforce that. So we know what I saw of
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan was the ground underneath me.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we flew over Taiwan frequently. It was called Formosa then.
Yeah, well, that's the island, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were still officially, they called themselves China,
Yeah,
which they still do.
as they still do.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I was wondering if one of your jobs was kind of to look for any possible Chinese moves against that, or I guess there'd be a lot of units who were doing that, I suppose, but.
That was one of our main jobs.
Mhm.
And we received orders that if we saw an invasion from China to Formosa,
Mhm.
or from Formosa to China, we were to stop it.
Mhm.
Being a wise guy, please,
Mhm.
you can edit that. I talked to the squadron commander and I said, sir, we have 4 20 millimeter cannons, we have 2 50 caliber machine guns, and we have a 500-pound magnetic mine. How are we going to stop an invasion? He just said, get out of my office.
Mhm.
But that was one of our instructions.
So they were worried about the prospect even of the nationalist Chinese trying to go back into China. at
Yes,
some
very
point.
much. Because Chiang Kai-shek was still the person in charge.
Mhm.
And Chiang Kai-shek was not a nice guy. And I think even the Chinese were concerned about a possible invasion,
Mhm.
where he wanted to come and take power back.
Okay. Now, you were flying some of these missions while the Korean War is still on, right?
Yes.
There's still a war going on there. Did you pay much attention to the course of the war or peace negotiations or things like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, anybody who was in the military at that time, that was a focus. Because every little, even though we were not on the ground in Korea, what was going on the ground in Korea was a huge concern. And we were apart from, for example, when President Truman fired General MacArthur. That was a big thing. And everybody was either sad or jubilant, depending on whether you ever had an encounter with MacArthur. Most of us, the guys in the squad, we had a lot of World War II reboots, and they had a very poor opinion of General MacArthur. So there was a little jubilation there when he got fired.
All right. Now, were you still on Okinawa when the armistice was signed, or had you gone to another assignment
No,
by then?
we're still there.
Okay. Now, did that affect you at all once the armistice was announced? Did that change anything?
There was a lot less tension, and they stopped shooting at us. So yes, there was considerable change. And it was shortly after that we got rotated back to Hawaii.
Okay. But how many months do you think you spent in Okinawa?
Probably 8.
Okay.
Maybe more.
All right. Now, what did you do on Okinawa when you weren't flying?
There was not a lot to do. There were villages outside the gate, which candidly were basically houses of prostitution. We kind of entertained ourselves. Whiskey was $5 a gallon, and that's all they had. So
So they didn't
whiskey,
have beer,
you had a
just what?
gallon. They had beer, yeah.
Okay.
And there was a theater there, and a post thing. Not a lot to do.
Did they have civilians working on the base, or were everyone off base?
They had civilians working on the base. For example, the mess halls were pretty much operated by the military personnel, but the people who acted as servers and mopped the floor and washed the dishes were Ryukyans. And they kept the airfield grass mowed. The Ryukyans did it by a long string of people with scissors, and they could squat literally for hours, and they cut the lawn or the grass between runways and stuff with scissors.
Okay.
It was well maintained. I don't know how anybody could squat for hours on end, but the Ryukyans could. The Ryukyans are similar to Japanese, but they are not Japanese. Okinawa is the capital of the Ryukyu Islands, which are a chain of islands south of Japan.
Right.
And they could take days and days and days of just working.
Okay. How did the locals seem to view the Americans, as far as you could tell?
They liked us. Keeping in mind that we were only a few years from the Japanese occupation of Okinawa. And they fought for that land because they considered it part of their homeland.
Right.
And that's one of the bitterest battles of World War II. And when the Japanese realized that they were going to lose the war and lose, or at least lose Okinawa, they took the civilian population, lined them up 4 abreast, and marched them off a cliff. Thousands were thrown to their death. again, this was not that far
Right.
behind, so the indigenous people there remembered that and remembered the treatment they got at the hands of the Japanese. So we were viewed as liberators, not as invaders.
Okay. All right. To think back at that time you spent on Okinawa, are there other particular things that kind of stand out in your memory?
Yeah. We did a lot of training when we were off. One of the things we did, we had to gunnery training. They didn't have rifles on Okinawa. So we were given shotguns and went to a ski range. Well, the shotguns were riot guns. The barrel was about that long. It had a pattern that would fill this room. So we're all coming back with scores of 199. That was kind of fun. Three of us kind of got lost going back to the base. And we're walking through this village, and everybody in the village was lined up on both sides of the street watching the three of us walk by. Well, we found out when we got back to the base that was the only communist town on Okinawa. And here's three sailors walking down the middle of the street with shotguns. We drew a lot of attention, and we were scared as hell after we found out what we'd just gone through. There was not a lot to do. I mean, there was no scenic things. So there were not a lot of things going on that were not related to the squadron or to the flight operations.
Now, did you have things like USO shows coming through or anything like that?
Had one, Tennessee Ernie Ford, and he was great. And then Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, two drummers, came along with Tennessee Ernie, and they played a duet, several of them on drums, all drums, spectacular. That was, I mean, you didn't have to like music. If you liked loud noises, that was it. That was, Bob Hope never made it to our area.
All right. Now, once the time in Okinawa comes to an end, where do you go next?
Back to Hawaii.
Okay. And then did you stay there long or get reassigned, or?
I was there for a couple of months, and my father wrote me and told me my mother was dying. And he went to the Red Cross, and they said to ask him if they can get me transferred somewhere nearer Chicago. And they said, yeah, we can do that. It'd take about 6 weeks. And of course my father said she'd probably be dead by then. So he called a friend of his. And the next day, I've got a copy of the telegram. Said, I want to the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, top guy. I would like to have James M. O'Malley, AT-3 42735 23252, transferred to Glenview Naval Air Station north of Chicago as quickly as possible. The next day I was on an airplane. The telegram was signed Joseph McCarthy.
Oh my. Wisconsin, yeah.
Yeah. My parents knew Joe. He was a monster, but not 24 hours, 7 days a week. For the people in Wisconsin, he would do whatever needed to be done. So then I was transferred to Glenview, and then with about 6 months or so left on my enlistment, I was transferred down to Brunswick, Georgia.
Okay. Now, what did you do while you were at Glenview?
Electronic service, didn't fly anything. Worked in the electronic shop, and that's about it. Stood guard once in a while. Sometimes, if you were unlucky and you were on duty, you were told to chauffeur the admiral, and that was a trip. You're in a car in Chicago on the outer drive, which was the main road in Illinois, and the admiral was still commanding a ship, and he's sitting in the back seat saying, "Starboard, starboard, hard to port, hard to port." And he couldn't turn around and say, "Will you shut up and let me drive this car?" He was Daniel Gallery. He was in a 2-star, and he was the commander of the flotilla that captured the U-505, and he was very instrumental in bringing the U-505 to Chicago,
Right.
where it still is at the museum. If we have time, I'd like to tell a story about me and the admiral.
Sure.
I was transferred out of the squadron. 2 of us were transferred out of the squadron to Glenview. Now, those of us who were on flight status, if we had completed more than 24 combat missions, we earned the Air Medal, which I think is kind of equivalent to the Bronze Star in the Army. When they came in, our squadron commander called a dress inspection one Saturday morning. He had a box of Air Medals, and he lined all the flight crews up and went down the line and said, "Here's yours, here's yours, here's yours." This other guy and I were at Glenview, reviewing stand. All the base officers, including the admiral, on the reviewing stand. Pins the medal on our chest. Full review of the entire Reserve Corps of Illinois with the Navy band marches in review. It was wild. We're walking back, and the guys are walking up. Wow, war is hell, guys.
Yeah.
I wrote back to the squadron. Some of the guys told them what had happened. Oh, they were so mad. But that was just one of the cool things that happened.
All right. And did you like being back in Chicago, or were you perfectly happy to go someplace else to finish out your enlistment?
I'd had it by then, and I'd met some people in Chicago, including the girl who eventually became my wife.
Okay. But I was also asking, so basically you had a good time in Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you don't finish your enlistment there. You have one more duty station
one
after
more
that.
duty station.
Okay.
And that was cool. All this time at Glenview and then at Brunswick, I was one of the very few regular Navy guys there. So I was kind of an untouchable, especially down in Georgia. And, when I was still at Glenview, we had a terrible storm. And they got everybody on duty out driving plow trucks to keep the runways open. And after that, I was transferred down to Georgia. Well, we got snowplow driver on our Navy driver's licenses. So I get to Georgia and I'm checking in, and the personnel officer's young man, he said, "You have quite a distinction." I said, "What is that, sir?" And he said, "You're the only qualified snowplow driver in Georgia." And but there was only 2 airplanes there, and since I was the only one that ever flew, I was put in charge. Well, they had a Beechcraft, 4 hours a month. There were only 2 pilots on the base, so the 2 pilots would take the Beechcraft up for 4 hours once a month to get their flight pay. The other was a helicopter, and no one knew how to fly it. So I was in charge of those 2. Well, I just did all kinds of things with those airplanes. I put in an intercom system in the helicopter that didn't have one. I put a loudspeaker system in the headquarters because they didn't have any way of addressing the people on the base. Played a lot of touch football. The only bad thing was it was a Loran station, which is a worldwide navigation system.
Mm-hmm.
And it consists of beams being projected all over the world. And Brunswick Air Base was one of the stations for that. And the Loran was on top of one of the blimp hangars. Well, because the blimps are gigantic, the hangars are about 10 stories high. The Loran station was on top of this hangar. And I had to, once a week, check to make sure the Loran was operational. There was a ladder going up, not stairs, not an elevator, a ladder. So there was a rope. I'd tie my tools on there, and I'd go up this ladder. And I'm not good. I'm okay in the air, in an airplane, or on a tall building. Put me on a 6-foot ladder and it's Panic City. Well, you can imagine going up this ladder. So it was the job I hated more than anything I've ever done. And I'd get it up and check it out. Other than that, it was just playtime, basically.
Now, did they take the blimps out and use them, or do they stay in the hangars?
Once in a while,
Okay.
yeah. They were basically, as I said before, they were anti-submarine devices. Well, of course, the war was over, so there were no submarines to worry about. Beautiful part of the country, though. I enjoyed being there. It still is. There's Jekyll Island and just millionaires' roost, basically.
All right. Now, was there much kind of resort or tourist stuff there in those days, or is that all grown up later?
Well, there was, not there. Brunswick is only about 50 miles north of the Florida state line.
Right.
So a lot of people, especially around Jacksonville and Daytona Beach, which are pretty far north in Florida. So a lot of tourist action there.
Okay.
And we would do that. I mean, we could drive down there in an hour.
Right.
And
Okay.
so we spent a lot of time there.
Now, during the time you were in the Navy, did anybody make much of an effort to get you to re-enlist?
Not a lot. When I went through the checkout with the personnel officer, he said, "What are your plans after the Navy?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go back and finish college." And he said, "Oh, well, in that case, there's no point in me trying to sell you on staying in." And that was the extent of
Okay.
the pitch. There were other times when I said, staying in the Navy is a real good thing to do. And of course, we all said, maybe for you.
Right. Okay. So then, once your enlistment comes to an end, do you go back to college? Is that the...
I did.
Okay.
I went back to Chicago, and I went to Loyola University.
And what did you study there?
English. My goal was to become a teacher.
Okay. And did you do that?
Not then. 40 years later. Unfortunately, they mixed up my schedule. And my senior year, they told me that in order to get my teaching certificate, I'd have to stay in school 1 more year. Well, I had been married, and we had 1 child and another one on the way already. So staying in another year was just not in the cards. And so I ended up in Michigan.
And doing what?
Well, I came up with the Sherwin-Williams Paint Company, and I was supposed to go back to Wisconsin with them, but they screwed that up. Came to Michigan, and then I went to work for a number of companies, basically sales management, advertising management, and in 1996, a friend of mine was the principal of Lake Michigan Catholic School, and I was there to visit him, and his secretary said, "Why don't you teach?" I said, well, I don't have a certificate. He said, no problem. You can substitute, and you don't need, all you need is 90 hours of post-secondary education. Of course, I had a bachelor's degree, so
Yeah.
I was way above that. So then I started substitute teaching, and then they said, hey, you're pretty good at this one. We're going to make you a permanent substitute. So I taught at Lake Michigan Catholic School. I also coached football and track there. And that was basically who
Right.
I am.
All right. Just to close things out, if you look back at the time that you spent in the service, how do you think that affected you, or what did you take out of it?
I think it was a good thing. I think I grew up. I think I learned that there's more serious things than playing football. The harder I worked, the better off I was. I think for me it was a positive experience. I've always felt if you're a good guy when you go in the Navy, you'll be a good guy coming out. If you're a rat going in, you'll be a rat coming out.
All right, that may well be the case. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story today.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
Did you tell your story about almost sinking a ship?
No.
Oh.
That's my favorite story.
Give us the short version. Yes, sinking a ship.
Well, while we were in Hawaii, the Navy, only 5 years separated from World War II, wanted to have a maneuver that would prepare the island for a possible surprise invasion. So what they were going to do, they were going to send 3 submarines to try and sneak into Pearl Harbor. And the rest of the 7th Fleet was to keep them out. Since we were an anti-submarine squadron, we were one of the leaders. So we were flying, and I was searching on the radar, and I saw this blip on the radar. Everything on the radar in those days was a blip. There were no topographical things. And I looked at my chart, and there were no ships supposed to be in the maneuver zone. So we caught the submarine on the surface. So I called the plane commander. They looked at their charts, same thing. So we shut off our...
All right. Now, you were telling us about an exercise of Hawaii where submarines were trying to sneak into the harbor, and the fleet was supposed to stop them, and you, with your aircraft, had spotted one. So what happens with that?
All right. So we saw this and confirmed that it was a maneuver zone. And so we approached it from a very circular way so they couldn't hear us real well or see us. And so I'm steering the airplane with my little radar, and we're zooming in. And this searchlight, the co-pilot had the toggle switch for the searchlight, and that's how we would capture the submarine. So we get in, and we're coming in, and we've been out there for a long time, and I was kind of bleary, but I was focused on that target. And we're coming closer and closer and closer. Finally, we got a quarter of a mile away. I said, hit the light. He flipped the switch. This huge searchlight went on, and there in the middle of the light was the SS Lurline, the flagship of the Matson cruise liner. Bone white, beautiful, with all of the people on the cruise lined up along the rail because they heard this big noise coming at them. And the searchlight would blind you for about 5 minutes if you looked at it. Oh my God. We lit up the flagship of the Matson line, the major tourist attraction from San Francisco to Oahu. Oh God. For the rest of the flight, there was not a word spoken. We landed, we went into the hangar, and there was more brass and more gold in that hangar than there was at Fort Knox. Everybody above the grade of petty officer was in there, and none of them were happy. We get out, and now, it's Leavenworth for all of us for the rest of our lives. Well, turned out that the lower line the Matson line had been told that there was maneuvers going on and to stay out of that zone.
Mhm.
So they were blamed, and we got off the hook. And that was like, you got to the 13th step of the gallows, and they said, okay, go on back down.
Okay. All right. So you were basically sort of about that close to blowing up the passenger ship, or shooting at it, or
Well,
whatever.
pretending to shoot at
Yeah.
it. We would actually shoot
Right.
over, because they would be one of our own ships.
Right. All right. Now, how close did you ever get to actually spotting an enemy submarine, or what did you find instead?
Well, one night, we were the duty squadron, and they got a call in from a MATS plane, military air transport, passenger aircraft, and they had spotted a whale. And so we were called out. It's obviously a Russian submarine, and we got to go blow it up. So 3 o'clock in the morning, we get roasted out. And, we fly out. The MATS plane was circling over the submarine. So we went in and we did all our usual search and detection systems, including the sonar and everything. And finally we saw it. So the plane commander called up to the MATS plane and said, "Gentlemen, you may rest easy. We found your whale."
Mm-hmm.
And they were sufficiently embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we would have laughed at it, except we're all bone tired.
Mm-hmm.
I did find the submarine once. It turned out to be an American submarine. As this was in the era of American submarines who would stay underwater for weeks and months. And we just lucked into it, and we did find one, but it was not an enemy.
Okay, but were you able to identify relatively easily that it was friendly, or did you have a time when you thought it might be a Soviet one, or?
Well, you can communicate, because a lot of these submarines were high enough in the water that their radio antenna would stick up. So we called down there and said, identify yourself, and it came back up. We are the USS, I don't remember the name of it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Another time, we were called out that one of the troop ships on its way to Japan had developed cholera aboard. And again, we were the duty plane, and so we were called out, given a serum, and said, take it out there and drop it to them. Well, this thing was halfway from Midway to Japan, and so it was a long flight. We stopped at Midway for refueling, and we found the ship and dropped the serum to him, and we had a young pilot. It wasn't the one we found him in. He said, "Wow, this is great. We're going to fly over it, and I'm going to reverse the engines so we make a lot of noise." But if you reverse the engines on a P2V Neptune, it is as airworthy as this building. I said, "Oh God, don't do that." Well, it turned out he was just being a jerk. Thought he was funny.
When you were flying over the ocean, would you fly higher? As you said, you normally flew under 500 feet. Was that when you're close to China?
Those were the combat flights.
Yeah.
Regular flights, like one time we flew back to Oakland to get a new plane, and we usually fly about 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Maybe 2,000.
Okay, but you're really still not flying up at the altitudes that normal aviation flies at, or transporters, or things like that.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we would just fly whatever direction we had and
All right.
operation level that they gave us.
Okay. So, anything else we left out?
I don't think so.
All
I
right.
got one more story.
Oh,
if you
go
want.
ahead. Go right ahead.
All right, we were going back to Oakland from Oahu to pick up a new airplane. That's when we got the
Yeah,
fives. And so they sent a skeleton crew. It's pilot, co-pilot, navigator, one radar man, one radio man. So we went on the Martin Mars amphibious liner.
Mm-hmm.
The officers and dependents were in a regular airplane, like a regular liner.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the hold of this. It's a flying boat.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a boat, and it was cold because the hold was not heated.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't smoke because the gas tanks were right under us. They didn't have seats in it. They had the slings
Mm-hmm.
that you sort of fell into. It was miserable. About halfway through the flight, our pilot came down from the flight deck. He said, boy, he said, it's really nice up there. Nice carpet,
Mm-hmm.
big bunks, it was really warm. I said, ooh. So I went up on the flight deck and I went to the radar operator. I said, you know, I'm a radar operator. If you want to catch a few Z's, go ahead and I'll keep my eye on the radar for you. Oh, yeah, good idea. So I'm sitting in there, having a cigarette. And he went and laid out on the bunk. And after a while, he got up and I said, if you want to go back to work, do you mind if I lay down on your bunk for a little bit? So I laid down on the mattress was like that thick, and it was beautiful. And I slept a little bit. Later on, I went back down to where those guys were, to a very hostile reception. You son of a gun, you're up there smoking and sleeping, and we're down here freezing to death. They finally forgave me.
Mm-hmm.
When we got to Oakland, we picked up the new airplane, and this is the first plane we had with the bow turret.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the very few people in the squadron who could get in the bow turret because I was small.
Right.
And so we always had to test the plane before we accepted it. So we're up testing it, and I'm in the bow turret, and I'm testing the turret. And the whole turret moved, not just the guns. So I go up, one gun came. Went to the right, everything's fine. Went to the left, everything's fine. Went down and went weightless.
Oh.
I thought, this is a new plane. They didn't tether the bow turret to the airplane, and me and the turret are going down in the ocean. Turned out the pilot, just at that second when I depressed the guns, went into a shallow dive.
Mm-hmm.
I got up on the flight deck and we had a very intense discussion about never ever doing that again. This guy, he practiced one engine landings. And the last thing you do on a single engine landing is to put the gear down so you don't have drag until the last second. He forgot. He put the thing down on the belly. 3 weeks later, he is flying this airplane that we're testing.
Mm-hmm.
I said, he does this in practice. What's he going to do when it counts?
No. How long did you have him as your pilot?
That was the only time.
Oh, okay.
And that's the only time I wanted him. Most of the pilots were good guys. We had a couple of guys that, being officers and flight commanders, were pretty heady.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them just thought they were better than everybody in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I had one guy, he was officer of the day when we were in Hawaii, and I was doing the mid-watch. And our airplanes had a 108-foot wingspan, and they were parked side by side. So it's pretty much space. So I'm at this end, and it's after midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And at the other end, this guy pulls up in a Jeep, jumps out of the Jeep and jumps into one of the planes. And I'm way over there. So I ran over here as quick as I could. He's up in the airplane. And I said, whoever is in that plane, come out slowly so I can see your hands, or I will fire. I had a 45.
Mm-hmm.
It was empty.
Mm-hmm.
But when I said that, I pulled the charger back. In the middle of the night, with no other sound around, that thing sounded like a cannon going off.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled that thing back, and he came out of the airplane. He said, "Put your ID card on the ground and step back 5 paces." He did that, and I picked up his ID. Of course, I knew who it was. Gave it back to him and said, "You may leave." He wanted to court-martial me in the worst way. He wanted the death penalty, I swear. But he couldn't do a thing about it because I was right and he was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to fly with him once, and that was ugly. He still remembered, of course, so did I.
Mm-hmm.
But some things happen, non-military, that you remember.
Sure.
I remember a buddy of mine set fire to one of the dumpsters, walked around the building, came back and called it in, and he got a commendation for it. So some things you remember that were not war-related, that
Right.
are kind of funny.
Sure.
And I did run into that same officer, and I got him again. My spot on the airplane was next to the escape hatch. And part of my job was when we landed and we came to a stop, I was to jump out of the hatch. And we had things we called stiff knees. They were pins. And we'd stick those in the gear, the landing gear, so they wouldn't fold up by accident. But this one time, we landed. It was about midnight. And he had his Jeep parked and his headlights pointed right where I was coming out. And of course, we'd been with red lights for hours.
Mm-hmm.
I came out and boom, those lights. And I kind of staggered a little bit, and the prop is still spinning. I went after him. I called him every name I could think of, and I made some up. I said, "You never do that." I said, "You almost killed me. You never point your headlights at the egress of an airplane at night." Again, he couldn't do anything but take it. He and I were not best friends.
No.
My pilot was just a brilliant airman. He was the #1 lieutenant junior grade in the United States Navy, because they brought so many officers back from World War II that they had so many lieutenants that rank was frozen.
Right.
He was #1 on the list. The very next person who was made a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy had to be him.
Mm-hmm.
And although he was a lieutenant junior grade, which is first lieutenant in the Army, he was probably the most respected pilot in the squadron, and deservedly so. He was.
And had he served in World War II? Was he old?
No,
enough?
he was.
It was just that good.
He was that good.
Okay.
Our co-pilot was a retread from World War II, and this guy, he was really very calm. He was the guy who was the pilot when we were picking our way through the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Never a thought of getting up any higher or doing anything different. First time I flew with him, we lost an engine. We're coming back, and here's the conversation. Armchairs, Barb Tower, this is Armchair 7. Requesting an emergency straight in landing. Armchair 7, what is your emergency? We have lost an engine. Armchair 7, are you requesting emergency gear, equipment? Barb Tower, yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. That's the tone of the entire conversation. It's like saying, Barb Tower, what's on the movie at the chow hall tonight? So I figured, hey, I got a good one, and I was right. He was a really good airman.
All right.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing.